Thanks, guys, for tuning in. My name's Lizy Hoeffer. This is my amazing guest, Emily Duarte.
Hello.
I'm super pumped to have her here. She is a local investor, not only just in real estate, but just in general. She does like fix and flips, long-term holds. She runs Grid, which what does Grid stand for?
Well, it's an investor network, and we do monthly meetings to talk through different phases of the investment process.
But what does Grid stand for? Do we know? We don't know.
Put me on the spot here.
Okay, I don't know. I've always wondered. I'm like such a marketing person, so I always want to know, like, what's the acronym? So she's here today to answer everything about investments, about if you can still find a deal in this crazy market. So I'm super pumped to have her. For those of you guys who are new to these lives, I always start out with just a brief market update on what's happening, my just 2 to 50 cents on interest rates and the mortgage market and real estate just in general, okay? So it's been a fun week. Monday was a day where we had what's called a mortgage coupon rollover. And so for you guys, mortgages are finite. They run a 30-year term typically. And so every single month, you're going to have a new 30-year term that's actually come up. And so they have to consolidate these pools of mortgages. And whenever that happens, we normally see a little bit of a price movement. But Monday was like, oh my God. It's like we lost almost 80 basis points, which depending on the lender is somewhere between half a point to a whole point in pricing. And so it felt like mortgage Armageddon. Like I never know what I'm doing. Like 1 second I feel like we're making a comeback. The next second I feel like I'm getting bitch slapped. It's like so insane. And then we had the consumer price index numbers come out on Tuesday, which normally isn't a big deal. In this high inflationary environment, it is bananas. Every time they say inflation is higher, we see interest rates go up. So I actually expected that Tuesday was going to be another really awful day. And instead, what we saw was it wasn't as high as people anticipated, right? So it was high, record high inflation, guys, but because it didn't like blow the number out of the water, because it was slightly lower than expectations, we saw a pretty big improvement, and then we saw another big improvement that lasted for the majority of today until it, pattered out kind of around 2 p.m. till market close. So I will say that now rates are similar to how they ended last week. So if you're in the market for that, and just so you guys know, to have some perspective on that, on Monday, they were reporting that the median interest rate for the country for a 30-year fixed mortgage was somewhere around 5.25%. Okay. So if you're watching today's video that I put on my channel, that's what I was referencing. And I talk all things affordability, which I still think that there's plenty of people that can afford this home, even with higher interest rates. And I still think that we are in a seller's market due to actual inventory. So that is my 50 cents on the market. Did you have anything to add to that?
I agree. We're still seeing record amount of showings, record amount of offers on our listings. There's just not enough inventory to service all of the buyers in the market. And because of that, we're still finding that the interest rates have not affected the activity all that much. I understand in some price points it may affect it a little more, but we're, haven't seen that lag measure yet.
Totally. And you actually bring up a really good point. So one thing that I always want to remind everyone is that whenever you see a headline, whenever you're seeing the media talk about what's happening in the market, everything is based on a lagging measure. In fact, all of the inflation numbers that we're reporting are lagging measures and what that means is that everything has already happened, right? And the future, right, what is happening right now has yet to be reported, and that is a leading measure. And so one of the key economic leading measures that you guys should be paying attention to right now is things that will show that the economy is starting to slow. And we are seeing that in manufacturing and imports, exports. Those numbers are down, right? And so we're actually seeing a lower demand than normal. And we won't see that information for several weeks to months, but we are starting to see the first type of headlines regarding recessions, a slowing down of the economy, and that will trickle down into real estate. And so one thing that I would love to clarify, because I know we're going to have people on here asking me about a housing crash, is that when values are like what we're talking about in terms of home values is appreciation. So future values are going to start to steady out, but we aren't going to see home values decline, right? So those are two different things. So appreciation and actually home values. And what people are concerned with is what they experienced with the Great Recession, which is where home values actually plummeted and people couldn't refinance or sell their homes, you know, because they owed more on their properties than what they were worth. And so we are not even remotely close to that type of environment. And I don't see anything in the near future that would lead us to having so much excess inventory that there was so much supply that people wouldn't pay for their homes.
100% agree. I think a lot would have to happen. I was in the business during that last recession crash, and we are not making those same kind of loans. We are not seeing the same number. You know, I say in the height of the market, we had 40,000 units on the market. You know, we have somewhere around 5,000 to 6,000 single family homes on the market. It's just not enough to service the demand. So even with some changes in interest rates, a lot would have to change, in my opinion.
So one of the things that Emily mentioned right there is that we have 6,000 homes on the market. And why that's important right now is because there are lots of headlines. In fact, there was an article that came out with Redfin about a week ago that talked about the increase in like properties and also the number of price drops. And I think it was like, you know, for the month of February, 12% of homes saw a price drop. And so that's double digits. That actually sounds pretty significant. But when you compare it to the year prior, which we know is to have been a super aggressive market, it was 9% at that time. So we're talking about a 3% change. Now, in terms of inventory, right, we've been seeing somewhere between 5,000 homes. So seeing 6,000 homes is a significant change, but a balanced market, if correct me if I'm wrong, is somewhere around 16 to 24,000. Yep. And so we're many months away from that. Especially if we're only inclining like 500 to 1,000.
Yeah.
So,
and price reductions, from my perspective, just being out there in the market, a lot of that I'm finding is coming from sellers who are way overshooting the market, thinking the market has gone further than it has, and they're having to pull back a little bit. And so some of that I think is inflated numbers.
And we're definitely seeing that, right? Like, so I would say that, you know, 2 years ago, it was like you had 60 people to one house, and I had people, like the highest I'd ever seen someone pay over a house was $170,000. And my money mindset was like,
what was the price point of the house?
It was about 900,000.
Okay.
It was, and they felt that, you know, when they improved their property, that the property would be worth significantly more. And at the time, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I could do that. And thank God I don't control everyone's finances, because little did I know the market would shoot up 30%. And that was a really smart money move. So just so you know, like, sometimes it does make sense to bid over asking, and it does make sense to understand like the appreciation for the specific neighborhood. And so those things are still happening, just not as aggressively today.
Agreed.
All right, so let's get to some of this chat, guys. So we got Jen from Scottsdale. Hello. We got AW from Surprise. Oh, hey, Evan, let's go. Dude, so pumped that you bought a house. Thank you so much for still tuning in. I appreciate you. We got Chow. We got Shadow Llama from Tampa. Terry Domrud. Oh, your home is paid off now. Congratulations.
That's awesome.
That is super awesome. Oh, my God. You guys, we have Davin Carey here. Literally one of my most favorite humans in life. I know him through my good friend Emily. We're so pumped that you're joining us. Let's see here. We have Bow Julie. Hi, Lizzy. Got an offer accepted through Underwriting. When is it safe to tell friends and family that you bought a house? Yeah. Can things still go wrong with Underwriting? Look, so this is my general advice on everything. Like, you only live once. Enjoy the moment. Tell your friends. Shit happens to everyone. God forbid, knock on wood, right? Hopefully you had a really solid pre-approval. But, like, honestly, enjoy this time. Right? Enjoy it as much as you can. For most people, they are stressed out of their mind. So the fact that you want to celebrate, I'm like, you go, girl.
Just don't go buy a new car.
Yeah, don't buy it. Don't go finance your celebrations. I have people who are like, YOLO, let me buy the car to fit into the new house. Yeah, don't do that. Okay, and then we have, Van Slama from North Virginia. Thank you so much for tuning back in here. It means a lot to me to have you back. We have, you know, guys, these names, I think it's Perculus or Percussion 1234. Welcome from Atlanta. We have Christina Lopez from Chi-Town. Oh yeah, don't forget to like this video, guys. It means a lot for me for you guys to give this a thumbs up. We have Rod and Laura from Michigan. Thank you. I did get a new haircut, guys. What are we? This is like my new look. It's
I dig it. I told you when
I feel like it makes me look tan. I honestly thought this today. I was like, do I look tan? I feel like I look more tan. Oh, Darren Buttery. Oh my freaking goodness, you guys. Darren Buttery's on this. He just gave us a super chat. He says, if I sell my house, my guitars are one of my kidneys. Oh, do you think I could afford to buy a tank of gas? Oh my God. You guys, food, gas, I mean, they're just going to continue to rise, especially because we have that geopolitical issue in Ukraine. I actually was reading something that talked about the fact that like Ukraine is one, guys, just a top 10 country for all kinds of things, especially food related, and how they had obviously not planted crops. And so like you can imagine that 6 months from now, due to supply and demand, again, we're going to see an increase in food prices. So just keep that in mind, guys, as you budget. I mean, I think this was intended to be a joke, but like, you know, it is just one of those things you guys want to budget for. Yeah, no, I missed a bunch. Okay. So Matthew says, what's the typical interest rate for an investment property? Duplex, well-qualified, 800 FICO score, low DTI, not our primary, strictly second property and investment. So here's the deal, guys. I cannot quote you rates on this live because I have not seen your scenario and it's highly regulated. And I do have haters. So unfortunately, I can't tell you what that is, but I will say that typically an investment interest rate is anywhere to a half a point to a whole % higher than what you would see on a primary residence. Typically, they have higher costs too in terms of discount points. And the other thing that you will want to know is that whenever you buy a multi-unit property, like a duplex, triplex, a fourplex, you will be asked typically to put down larger down payments. And those things, again, will affect your pricing and your interest rate. But I love the rest of your scenario, though. It sounds like you're well qualified. All right, so Van Slama says, when you say there's 6,000 homes on the market, are you talking about in our area? What are you referring to, and how can I find the averages for my area?
Great question. So when I pull properties, I am in the Maricopa County in Phoenix, so I have the whole Phoenix Valley, and so that's a general for our area. And typically we service, across the whole area. So certainly that would go down, per city or per location. So, maybe finding an app or something where you can pull the market that's just by you, your zip code, a city that you're looking for would probably be the best way to tell what's on the market right there. Because that average is really going to vary. That's the whole market. That can include a single family home in an area of town that maybe isn't, cost as much, and luxury high-end homes.
So one thing that I will tell you is that when you're working with an experienced real estate agent, they should know these stats. So oftentimes we find, especially in this market where we have a lot of people joining into real estate, right? Because it is like everyone has to start somewhere, don't get me wrong, but this has seemed to be like a very profitable market. You will find people that can't answer simple questions like this. And if they don't have the answer to that, chances are they can't really guide you with what's appropriate for bidding over ask, an appraisal gap coverage. So it is a qualifying question for a real estate agent, and they should have an answer to that question. All right, so we have Alejandra. Thanks, girl, for tuning in. We've got Rachel Barkley. Guys, she's also an amazing real estate agent in Phoenix. Love her to death. Thank you so much for joining. We have Afar A. How will the market react? Guys, I need glasses. This is it. Like, I need effing glasses. Okay. How will the Fed start actively selling some of the mortgage-backed securities? I have nightmares about that, truthfully. I think we've already started pricing in some of that expectation right now, especially given the fact that nothing has really happened to interest rates, right? And we've seen all of these investors pull out of MBSs. And so I think that we've actually seen a lot of the expectation to interest rates, right? So the change. So I'm hoping that not a lot, because I'm hoping that by the time they start backing out, we have other investors that are interested in replacing them. And I do think that the Fed is watching this pretty aggressively. And I'm hoping, right, that they don't make any rash moves when it comes to like offloading the balance sheets. All right, so let's see here. We have Kirsten, we got Christina. Love the new look. Watch every week. Thanks, girl. And then Bio Julie says, thanks, Lizzie and Emily. I won't go buy a brand new car.
Perfect.
But no money for gas. Oh my God.
Your lender and realtor will thank you.
I know. Can I tell you, what was that one transaction that we did where the dude bought the car? Do you remember that?
It was, I think, 2 cars during.
Was it 2 cars? Oh my God. Oh my God. It was 2 cars. Oh my God. And a trailer. Do you remember that?
During escrow. Didn't work out well.
So, okay. So funny story is most people do not live their lives to qualify for a home loan in any capacity. And so because of that, like we have to be really good advisors with telling people what to do, what not to do. And we had this one situation where, you know, they bought a vehicle, they let us know, and it all worked out. Okay, and so we were like, okay, we're fine, we're in the clear. And then all of a sudden they bought another vehicle. And it was like, okay, like really, you gotta stop. And then they didn't buy another vehicle, they bought a trailer. And it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. It was like, oh my God. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. It was like so funny.
Yeah.
But it was very stressful.
But it's not just that stuff too, right? Like if the property you're buying doesn't have appliances, the instinct might be to go and try and buy some so they're ready for the day you close, or furniture, but it's just not a good idea until you close.
No, and honestly, that's the thing that probably ages us the most. Or like my other favorite one is like, surprise, I'm not working here anymore. Like, gotcha. Okay, so because we have Emily on this live, I have some questions for you.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. So you're an active investor in this marketplace, and there are tons of people that watch this live, that watch my videos, that are super afraid of buying real estate in this market. What do you look for, like when you're making a purchase? Like, what's your buy box? Why would you still buy in a market where it's highly competitive and maybe the rate of returns aren't what most people would want?
Sure. Great question. I am investing in real estate now for the long term. So I'm kind of looking at the runway down the road. And to me, real estate is what I know. I also do other types of investing, but this is where I primarily invest because it's what I know. It's my profession, my career. So to me, if the numbers still make sense, I'll do it. I look at every property individually. I'm not the person who's going to bid $170,000 above, ask. I'm not going after perfect properties. But if the property it fits into what we're looking for, and typically what we look for is, I prefer single family homes over condos. I won't buy a 2-bedroom single family. It has to be at least 3 bedrooms. I don't like to buy anything that's more than 30 years old-ish. I like a certain number of a price and rent. I tend to like properties that will rent for a little higher because I just find that I like the tenants a little better in terms of, in the past, if I've had some stuff that's been, it's one flat tire might be the reason for them not making their rent that month. And my comfort level is just having, a different price point rental.
Yeah. So one thing that I've really respected is that there's always opportunities in every market. And sometimes we look at opportunities for like, what's the cheapest investment, right? Mm-hmm. And what I loved about her approach was that she started looking at the luxury market and what could she renovate, add square footage to that would meet the appreciation of the market and give her the biggest rate of return. Mm-hmm. And that is really smart in a market like ours, where you can see that, that the appreciation is going to be like anywhere between 20 and 30%, and to be able to have that vision and then also take that risk in investing and improving the property.
Sure. And I also look for multiple outs, right? Like, what's my exit strategy? If I'm flipping, I am not buying a property dependent on appreciation. I've been through the crash last time. That's speculating. That doesn't work. If the numbers work the day I buy it and it appreciates, great. But I'm definitely not buying anything with the idea that it has to appreciate for the numbers to make sense. So I found that by doing that, my numbers are pretty solid. I don't have any issues.
See, and this is super smart. So a couple things I want to dissect here for anybody who is thinking of investing. One of the things is she's very clear on her criteria for what makes sense for her particular investments. She has multiple strategies, which is what I tell you guys oftentimes in your home buying strategies, right? Like, you cannot just have plan A in this market. You have to have plan B, plan C, and sometimes even a plan D. Like, this is the kind of market that's just really volatile, and you have to do that. And so, like, these are things that make a solid investor. And last thing I want to point out, guys, is that she knows long term how she wants this investment to perform for her, which, again, I find lots of people just do what the hottest thing is, right? So, like, I'm in a bunch of, groups of people, entrepreneurs, investors, and, like, the biggest thing right now is an NFT. And I'm like, do you even know what an NFT is? It's like, or do you really, like, does this make sense for your long-term plan? And, like, it's the same thing with Bitcoin. I was like, okay, well, tell me why you would invest in currency, right? Like, lots of people have strong opinions about blockchain. I do too. I think it's amazing. But I also don't understand why that as a particular currency, why would you invest in that, right? And so for me, it's all about cash flow. It's about dividends. It's about my money babies having money babies, right? That's how I,
It's a great way to put it.
Yes. And so, like, these are really important things that you need to get from somebody who's very successful investing.
And the one thing I would say is you cannot be the expert at everything, right? Like, if you want to invest in industrial buildings, warehouses, I'm not your girl. I don't know. I don't understand that market, and that's not where I put my money. I invest in what I know. And I'm finding, like, as I'm listening to different podcasts and hearing interviews and reading books, some of the most successful people they're not on a 10-lane highway, they're on a 1-lane highway, and they're just going all in on that one thing, becoming an expert. I was in a training earlier today that Ben Kinney had put on.
He's an agent, by the way, out of Washington.
Yes, and one of the panelists said, as you become an expert, you know more and more about less and less. And I subscribe to that.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, so a couple questions here. Christina says, my sweet hubby has a low credit score and mine is high. Can I buy the house without him on the loan? What am I not considering? So this is actually a scenario that we see often. And sometimes it'll be like, my wife has super awesome credit but doesn't have a job, that same scenario. Yeah. So here are the things that you have to look for. One, you both can be on title of the property, which means that you have equal ownership, even if one person is not on the loan. The other thing to look at is if, let's say, you needed him to qualify for the price point that you're looking in, a lot of lenders can guide you with what the next steps are to maybe improving his score, because we do take the lower of the two median scores. So each of you get 3 scores. We take the middle one, right? And then that's the score that we base all of your loan terms on. So you will want to talk to somebody about what the next steps are in case you need him for qualifying for higher. But outside of that, it's pretty straightforward if you qualify for the loan, right? Actually, I take that back. One other thing that you may have to consider, there are certain types of loans that also require you to qualify with your non-purchasing spouse's debt. And that is also something that, again, could impact your ability to qualify for your price point. So those are all things to consider. But generally speaking, the loan process is exactly the same.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is if you think that you can't buy because of a credit score issue, reach out to Lizy's team. They've been really great with clients we've had in the past creating a credit plan. And oftentimes it's a couple of simple steps to get a score up that puts them in a position to buy when they thought that, there wasn't an option for them. So I would say it might be within reach.
Got it. Okay, so Julie says, speaking of jobs, could I apply for a second job, need all the money for a mortgage and gas? If I get hired, do I need to inform my lender? So here's the thing. You only need to inform your lender. Well, I would always inform your lender of any financial changes, period, at the end, because they will question the deposits. But you can only use that secondary job when you have at least a minimum of a year concurrent with your current job with no gaps. Some loan programs require 2-year consecutive history to be able to use that. And so it is a good compensating factor. It will not hurt you in qualifying. And honestly, second job, I see lots of people do it. Like they take a TaskRabbit, an Uber, right, DoorDash, and they do this so they can save additional money for their down payments, repairs, closing costs, you name it. So I do think it's a really awesome idea, especially if you're on any kind of financial journey.
Mm-hmm. But speak to, you said, if the point of getting the second job is because they need additional income,
it takes long. It's like 12 months to 24 months before you're able to use it. And then in that case also, just to add, it has to be like consistent jobs. So I also see people that like get a variable hour job and it's kind of just like all over the place. We do have to average those jobs. And so it isn't just like, I could work 40 hours at this job. So it just wants to be a consistent schedule. So that makes the average easier. All right. Yep. So Van Slama says, I bought a house I don't love, but needed to move in and buy now. What are the pros and cons of advice about moving and selling 2 years for something we love? I mean, this is the kind of market, guys, where this is like the house you like versus the house you love. I mean, that's what I've been telling people. I'm like, you can't get everything you could hypothetically, but it is challenging in a market like today to be able to find everything that checks all your must-haves and your want-tos. And so because of that, I think it's smart to have purchased. If you bought now, you definitely had some appreciation. If you own that home for 2 years as your primary residence, your tax implications are lessened due to the capital gains exemption. And so I think it's a really great stepping stone. We have tons of buyers. We call them move-up buyers that do this. I've done this. My first home was a townhome. My second home was my actual best buy ever. I bought it in 2011 in a U.S. Bank auction. I know, I was like so proud. That was like my best real estate deal, right? That's actually the money I used to start my business, right? So, and I've used every single home progressively as a stepping stone to get my next property.
Yeah. I tend to keep properties and not sell them. So I kind of look at everything in the lens of an investor. If there's an opportunity to keep a current home and get into a new primary with a low down payment and have a second source of income, that's where my mind tends to go. But I understand with how much the equity has increased, that it's an opportunity for people to have a significant down payment for their next home.
Yeah, I mean, so there's 2 rules of thumb when you're looking into real estate investing, truthfully. So one thing that I want to explain, so there is an idea of cash flow, right, which is retaining your properties and having cash flow. The tenants will pay your mortgage down, and then you'll get a couple $100s to then either apply towards the principal balance of that home to pay it off quicker or to invest in other things. And that's a wonderful strategy. There is also a different strategy where, for me, I've always tried to maximize my primary residences, because the type of property that I would want to live in will also be at a higher price point, which means that the appreciation long term will be greater. And if you look at appreciation tables, right, anywhere throughout the country, generally speaking, 20 years is that mark where your home will double in value. And that is still true for anyone who bought homes in 2006, right? So you just know that, like, if you own a home for 20 years, right, and you buy it at $400,000, and you will then be able to more likely sell your house for $800,000, what other type of investment will have that type of appreciation for you?
Sure.
So,
yeah, I love it.
All right. So we had some emailed questions in. All right. So this is from Fort Grove. Can I use my VA loan and credit score at 790? So the interest rates are near 5% now. Does that make sense to buy down if you're going to put $10,000 down on a $450,000 loan? Yes, you can use so VA loans, guys, I think go all the way down to 500. I think our company limit is at 580, but do not quote me. You will have to get an actual quote for that. His credit score is a 790. So yes, I would say you can take advantage of your VA loan. On VA loans, I do think it makes a lot of sense to put money down, even though you get a 0% down loan. And that's because you minimize your impact with the VA funding fee. For those of you guys who are eligible to take out a VA loan, you definitely want to look into that. You can be exempt if you have a 10% disability or more. But generally speaking, people will pay, up anywhere between 2.3 and 2.6% on their first time use, and then 3.6 on their subsequent uses. And that can be a lot of money. So putting down a down payment will then lower that. I mean, there's different ones for, there's a whole table you'll have to call me about, but it is something to definitely think about. And it does make sense to put down a down payment. And then Runs Marathon says, I feel runs marathons in general, like the first sentence is, I feel like I'm annoying. And honestly, you're not annoying, but honestly, I always look at people who run long distances, and I'm like such a hater. I'm like, no. Okay.
Because we can't do it.
Yeah, because I definitely can't do it. Okay, so let me go back. I feel like I'm annoying my agent by texting them every day with houses I find. What is the desired etiquette for communication between a buyer and their agent?
Read it again.
Okay, so they're texting their agent every day with houses they find.
Yeah.
What's the proper etiquette for communication? Like, you find a property.
Sure. In this market, it's tough, right? Like, things are going under contract super fast, and there is a bit of speed that is needed. Understanding that the agent that you're working with is a professional. Would you text your doctor at 10 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock in the morning? Probably not, unless it was an emergency. So just understanding a little bit of boundaries on time. But if a property comes up and the market's tight and you need to get in, we are talking to our clients a lot more regularly than maybe we did a couple years ago, where maybe we'd be looking at houses, once a week, and you could go look at 5 at a time. It's not really that way right at this moment. So
I know. Now we're jumping on them within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
This came on.
It's never offensive to us for our clients to reach out right away when they see a property. Certainly, I'm not going to go show a house at 5 in the morning. So it's not necessary to text at 5 in the morning. Beyond that, I think it's okay.
So here's because we get people who generally text us all the time. So if I can, right, because generally if I get a text message on a Sunday evening, I know someone's probably panicking about their loan. That typically does happen. And so I will try to answer. However, I have a start time and an end time, and after those, I really just do not carry my phone with me. And so, my phone doesn't even alert me to phone calls until 8:30. And honestly, I'm so distracted. I have 3 children, so I will not be answering. And then there's past 7 p.m. it also turns off. So those are kind of, we're not 7-Elevens.
Sure. My phone is usually off at night. There's absolutely zero that can be done on a real estate transaction at 11:30 at night. So I will take care of it first thing in the morning. We've never missed a deadline. We've never had something fall apart because we didn't respond to something that late at night.
Yeah. So
Lizy's way more generous than me sometimes.
Well, I don't know. Yeah. If I can, I will. Okay, so Anna says, I have excellent credit, but one line of credit card. Is it true it's required to have 2 different lines of credit? If so, would a second credit card be acceptable, or would it need to be something else? No, guys, there is no actual, credit requirement in terms of number of trade lines. That actually used to be, let me take that back, in terms of anything that's conventional or FHA. When you get into jumbo territory, different investors will have different requirements, but generally speaking, anything that's insured by an agency doesn't necessarily have a credit requirement unless, you have no FICO score at all. And then in which case they will ask for things like alternative trade lines, like your rental verification or utilities, and sometimes we'll even do that on a manual underwrite, right? So something that doesn't get an approve eligible through our automated findings. But if you have a long-term credit card, probably somewhere over 2 years that has 30% of the balance that you use regularly, I have seen people get approved with that. But most people, in order to have a pretty robust credit score, will typically want somewhere between 2 and 3 trade lines, generally with payment history of 12 to 24 months, with credit limits or credit balances that don't exceed 30% of whatever the limit is. So there is that. Okay, so we got some questions here. So Sarah says, what are the key differences between a buyer's market and a seller's market?
So I would say the primary factor tends to be inventory, right? Supply and demand. Right now, there's a very low supply, and because of that, you have multiple buyers typically for each property, and that puts the seller in a position where they have the leverage, right? They're dictating the terms. They're getting above ask offers. They're getting lots of waiver of contingencies and things like that. In a market, when we had 40,000 units on the market, some sellers would beg to get an offer, right? Like we have an average of 10,000-ish units that close a month, and that's 4 months supply. That's a long time. And in some markets, particularly the high-end luxury market, there might have been an 18-month supply at one point. That's a long time. So,
and what she means is, like, when she says like 18 months, is that it would take 18 months if no new houses came on the market to run through all the inventory.
Yeah. So typically the amount of properties on the market is going to dictate whether or not the buyers tend to have the upper hand or the sellers.
So one thing that I will tell you is that a typical seller's market prior to, real estate Armageddon, was a 97% of list price. Okay. What we're experiencing in these last 2 years, guys, is not normal. It's not sustainable. It will not last. Okay. So just be aware, this is unique. As were the historically low interest rates that we are not seeing anymore, okay? So one thing that's a key differentiator, and this is, again, something you'll have to ask your real estate agent, but generally speaking, when we are here and we see about 16,000 homes, that's a pretty favorable, stable market where, like, you can still find a deal and sellers, might still be willing to do some concessions. Whenever you get, above 20,000 here, it starts to lean in favor of our buyers, and anything in excess of that. So like back in the day when you had like 40,000 listings, those were the types of scenarios where they were paying like agent bonuses, all of your closing costs, your moving expenses.
Yes.
I mean, it was tough to find. We are a long way away from that though. And I think that what's positive about people infusing more cash into their real estate purchases nowadays is that they are more committed to them. Back in, the early 2000s when people were similar circumstances, limited inventory, really aggressive offers, people didn't have to put nearly as much of their own funds into it. And it's easy to walk away. And we actually still see that with people who put minimal down, like anywhere between 3 and 5%. They're typically the types of loans that default at the highest rate.
Skin in the game. Easy
All
to walk away.
So Fort Grove, welcome from Hawaii. Thank you for coming. Basically, I said, yes, you can qualify for your VA loan. And yes, it makes sense for you to put a down payment because you will minimize your VA funding fee. If you do not have a VA funding fee because you're exempt for some reason, it's, anytime that you can put money down on your property, you'll lower your payment. But let's say you don't need to do any of that, I might explore options with buying your VA loan down, especially if this is a long-term mortgage. But aside from that, you're probably better off if you have no VA funding fee and all terms are the same, maybe investing that money in something else. I don't know that it's going to, 10,000 is going to make that huge of a difference to your monthly payment. All right. So, response from the lender today, we could do a 90-day extension with a 1.5% buy down. That's pretty generous considering where rates are. Hope this helps. We could do a 90-day extension. Here's one thing. Okay, so there's a lot of companies right now. Even our company is rolling something out with an extended lock. And so, excuse me. Some of the things to consider with, I breathe like so much air in. It's like I can't help myself.
Just
it's
so
hard.
excited.
So one of the things with like an extended lock is that it costs a bunch of money. And so one of the things that you have to look at is like hedging your bet. There is some seasonality to mortgage pricing, and what would it cost you if you were paying 1.5 points to actually just buy that interest rate down versus getting an extended lock at a high interest rate with a 1% float down. So a lot of those terms that I'm seeing right now are in the mid fives just to secure a rate. And then you could probably get an even better deal just buying the interest rate down. So I would weigh out both options and have your lender do a side-by-side comparison. All right, so what's our advice for buyers that are being priced out of the market? For example, a $300,000 and below purchase price. Do you want to take that? And then I have my own opinions about that.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. So I think that people have to be a lot more flexible with their expectations. So I actually bought my very first home in 2006. It was very aggressive, very competitive. And one of the things that I had to realize very quickly was that if I wanted the house, right, if I wanted to buy a house, I was going to have to sacrifice on location. So I ended up living like 45 minutes away from my work. And I was going to have to sacrifice the type of property. So I ended up buying a townhome, and I ended up buying a townhome that was a fixer-upper. Now, I didn't buy one that like needed a ton of maintenance, but it was going to need an air conditioner, and it had like fire engine red cabinets. I mean, and like terracotta tile. It was like red inside. It's like, and it was just something that I knew I was going to have to give some TLC to. And that's how I made my first purchase. And the thing is that like, we just have to curb our expectations. The other thing that I would say for somebody who's truly unable to afford in this market is that not all markets are for home buyers. That same experience, guys, I bought before I was actually prepared to financially, and it was very stressful. And because I was overcompensating in housing, I ended up getting into debt, and my whole life became super stressful. So just also look at the dominoes. There's so many things. Like I would have been much better off, right? Because my mortgage payment was like $1,300, but my rent payment was only $600. I would have been much better off keeping my rent, applying $600 to investments or like getting down my student loan than I ever was buying. So just know that there are other things that you can be doing with your money that will still work for you while you improve your finances, pay down debt, save a larger down payment, get a higher paying job that will put you in a better position to buy in the future.
And what I would add to that is my grandparents have owned the same house for 62 years. That is super uncommon. Chances are this is not going to be the home that you live in forever. So get into the market, even if it, if you're worried about what you could have bought a year ago, you have to get over that because that market is over, right? We have to focus on the market that we're in. So if buying makes sense for you and you can financially swing purchasing a home, maybe it isn't the home that you thought you were going to buy, and what could that set you up for down the road? You're paying down equity. You have an opportunity to build wealth, to build an asset, and so if you're waiting for the perfect opportunity, you may just miss it.
Okay, that was brilliant advice. Seriously.
Thank you.
So Julian asks, would I make a soapy hands video? So this is really hilarious. So one of the weirdest things that has happened to me from being on the internet is I'm a hand talker. So I like go like this, I talk, and I get propositioned, guys, at least once every couple of weeks for hand videos, pictures, and videos of me washing with hands with soap. I've had people offer to send me soap. And so I had a question just in general. I was like, because I'm always looking for ways to leverage activities. I'm like, do you think I could do an OnlyFans with soap washing videos? I mean, it's not like I don't wash my hands. I just video it and monetize it. No?
Follow Lizy for more business advice.
Okay, but for real though, I am like a huge believer in like trying to leverage every type of activity for different ways to monetize. Like I created all these trackers for like generating business in my industry. I sold them. Like I created a bunch of workbooks. People want to buy them for me to teach their own lunch and learns. I sell them, right? Like this YouTube channel, I started recording videos and then I monetized it. Like I'm always looking for every single which way possible to bring in extra cash flow. That doesn't mean that I take on additional activities.
Sure.
So like, while this is a really hilarious scenario, because I wash my hands, the only thing I would need to do is just video it and upload it. So, just like, I'm not against
we'll check back with you and see how
side hustles,
right.
but let me know if I have good hands, basically, in the comments. Oh, wait, I was like picking up my phone thinking I was going to read them. They're right in front of me. Okay. All right, so let's see. Tomcat, what separates a good real estate agent from others? I'm looking to start the process of buying a home, and I'm flooded with agent choices. I have opinions on this, but you go.
Well, what's important to you, right? Like when I look for a profession, a doctor, an attorney, I want somebody who's a specialist. I want somebody who has experience. you can, the running joke is you could probably throw a quarter and hit 4 realtors here in town. And, it doesn't mean everybody operates at the same level. And that's not saying everybody isn't operating at the best of their capacity, but it's a tough market right now. So you really need somebody, who has the experience, who has done a number of deals in the last year, who can walk you through the process, who has creative ways of getting deals done, who is finding off market properties. The days of letting a property come on the MLS, hoping you as the client sees it and calling me for a showing, those days are over. We have to be a lot more proactive, and that has to be an important choice when you're looking for somebody.
So I think that right now, like, there are so many unprofessional real estate agents out there. And when I give somebody like my endorsement, it's because I've worked with them for a long time. They know what they're doing. They're tenacious, they're aggressive, they're responsive, they understand market statistics, and they're not out to get people, right? Like, this is my criteria for working with real estate agents. And because I get to experience like a lot of listing agents and a lot of people that come in with their own agents, I mean, it's the difference between getting somebody under contract in 30 days and getting them under contract in 6 months. It's also the, like, an agent might not know how to keep a deal together, or might not prepare an appraiser with an appraisal package. Like, all of these things cost you guys money. They're not just people that show you houses. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a very big misconception, is like, people think that they buy the house. They're actually your fiduciary and your legal representative in a contract. And like, I just had probably, it's not my worst experience, but I would definitely say top 5 experiences with a real estate agent. And like, what's interesting about this is, we were under contract for like a week, and my client at the time had written the contract and relinquished all of their contingencies, which means that it didn't matter what the appraisal came in at. They were going to do an inspection, but they also agreed to buy the property as is. And so, interest rates are really aggressive. They decided they wanted to restructure their loan because they weren't super happy with the terms. And unfortunately, like, you can do a lot, like, you can shop around, but the market is really the market. If you're not happy with the numbers, like, this is important stuff that you have to do homework on. So they decide that they're going to cancel. In the way that you negotiate a contract, if you've written away all of your contingencies, unfortunately, you forfeit your earnest money. And we had an agent that just did not know how to cancel the contract and kept harassing me and my team, like, just nonstop, asking for a denial letter and all these things. Like, her job is to represent her seller, and the contract was done. My client understood and was happy. I mean, people change their minds. It does happen.
Sure.
And like, for 4 weeks, harassed me for a letter that was unnecessary, didn't need it in the contract. She felt super angry. But like, imagine being that person, like, that person selling your home. Like, that person does not know the contract, harassing other business professionals. I mean, it was like the most bizarre thing I'd ever encountered in my life.
It happens more than you think. And like I said, I think people do the best they know how, but the best you know how is sometimes just not good enough with a legal contract. I'll be 17 years in the business this fall. My clients have never lost earnest money. And I always tell a client on a listing appointment, that if there's a dispute over earnest money, we're not going to lose, because I know the contract likely better than the person on the other side. On the other side, I've taken quite a bit of earnest money over the years, and it's never a fun thing to do. However, if a buyer is not abiding the terms of the contract, that is the seller's recourse, is the loss of that earnest money. I've even had a buyer who was represented by her own dad lose $8,000 in earnest money to my seller because he just didn't understand the contract.
And I think that these are just really important things, and there are obviously multiple ends of the spectrum. In this market, and again, having a good representation matters. So like, if you don't fully understand what contingencies you're waiving when you enter a contract, that's number one. But 2, like, people are buying lots of properties sight unseen, doing these things, knowing that they're risking a certain level of money to get something under contract. But you got to be working with people who get that, right? And who can guide you appropriately, who can educate you, and then who also advocate for you. There's so many different points in which the conditional loan approval, appraisal, inspections, title companies, right? Like, I mean, I was about to get ready to close on a transaction, and then all of a sudden they found a lease penance, or oops, they forgot about the solar transfer. It's like, I can't even tell you how many times, like, a real estate agent matters in a transaction. And so you definitely don't want to skimp on that. And so I think I've like beat a dead horse here, but like it matters
it
a
does.
lot. Okay.
Lender also, I mean, look, we have listings, and when somebody brings a lender, and it's usually a internet lender or a big box lender from another state, and you can see it a mile away, and you get to the end and they just can't get it done, and that's typically,
well, they're not responsive. They don't work like the hours that you need to get an offer accepted. They don't know the forms. They're not accustomed to talking to listing agents. They don't advocate for you. Like, one of the things I was talking about today with somebody is like, I don't just call someone and say, oh yeah, I've reviewed all their docs and they're qualified. I'm like selling this agent on like why this client is the best client for their home, and why they're the most secure offer, right? And how we're going to go to bat and make that thing sail through to the end. And like, that's a much different advocacy than someone who like maybe will call on your behalf or not. All right, so Raul says, I missed the window to refi my house with decent interest rates. That's lower than the one I currently have. Is there an option to cash out equity without hurting my interest rate? You could always get a secondary loan, like a line of credit, to pull out equity, right? That loan will be paid at simple interest based on the balance that you owe for that. And typically the payments are interest only, so depending on how you want to pay that off, interest only payments are generally much lower than what a principal and interest payment would be, but that's one way of not impacting your first mortgage. I will say though that I do think that interest rates, I don't think for the short term, like anywhere in the near 90 days will we see huge decreases in interest rates, but I do think that there's a chance, guys. I think they're talking about recessions. Historically, recessions bring lower interest rates, and so I think that there will still be an opportunity for you to potentially refinance if you missed out. Rachel, where do I send this soap to? So I love that you're supporting my side hustles. Okay, so Eric Martinez says, what's the recommended amount in your monthly budget is reasonable to go to a house payment with having absolutely no debt whatsoever? So it really depends on your discretionary spending, but generally speaking, okay, it's anywhere between like 30 to 40% of your net take-home income, right? And that will also vary based on people's comfort levels. Do you have a different opinion on that?
I always tell people, look at your budget, right? Like I have found that a lot of times people can be approved for more of a monthly payment than what they ultimately desire to have in their budget. So sometimes they have to work backwards. If you're only good with $1,500 a month, then we have to work back, and figure out what that max dollar amount is. But with no debt, you probably are going to get approved for more than maybe you'd ultimately like to spend, and it should just be a percentage of your income.
So I think that that's a lot of responsibility that clients give us. So I will tell you that 9 out of every 10 clients asks me what they can afford. And I will say, what's interesting is I can tell you what you qualify for. And oftentimes people will qualify for higher than the amount that they're willing to pay. And so that's actually why I came up with SMART steps, right? So that I could teach people about personal finance. So let's say this is the first time you're visiting a budget. If you go to my website, there's a really good budget worksheet that will help you break down all of your expenses and will help you figure out what's an appropriate amount based on, our 70-20-10 rule. So I tell people that a good, healthy lifestyle budget is one where you can live off 70% of your net take-home income, because you still have money to pay debt down, you still have money to, save, right? Any budget that allows you to save at least 10% of your funds is a healthier budget. But when you can do that effectively, guys, you have so much room to do so many things. And one of the biggest complaints that I get from consumers, clients, agents, peers, is that they can never take advantage of an opportunity when it presents itself because they don't have the cash. And so the only way to have the cash is to budget, to live below your means, and to save consistently.
And if saving consistently is something that you struggle with, I talked about this earlier today at a little mastermind that I went to. What is that automatic thing that can happen every month to take that out of the equation, out of your bank account, into somewhere where you don't see it every day? That has been a game changer for my own family over the last 12 years or so, that every month a certain amount gets taken out and put other places. And we just operate as if we don't have it. And it creates this automatic savings that, like, I don't have to think about, I don't have to change. But if something happened, I have money to go to in the event of an emergency, but I just am, from my perspective, it's not available to me for my lifestyle.
And so that concept is called paying yourself first. So many of your guys' employers, guys, can set up multiple direct deposits. So this is something that people don't know, but you can have money automatically directed to a savings account on every single paycheck. And what's beautiful about that is that those of you who have variable pays, so you get overtime or you get bonuses or commissions, what's oftentimes, if you do this 10% rule, you will save way more money than if you just dedicated like $250 a month or $500 a month. And so I always like to deal in percentages. For me, that's what works. That's what's gotten me ahead. But most people, just on average, can save a down payment, like a 5% plus all their closing costs, in anywhere between 1 to 3 years on this plan. And other people can get out of debt anywhere between 3 and 6 years, right? And I've done this a variety of different times with people that have like a lot of money, people that are just barely starting, and it's incredible. Like somebody who's just saving like their hourly rate every single day can still save a couple $1,000s by the end of the year.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, so let's see. What's better, paying a higher interest rate and a lower house price, or a lower interest rate and a higher price point of the house? And do I see house prices coming to realistic growth? I mean, that's a really difficult question to answer, because you lose 10% of your buying power, right? Every time an interest rate increases 1%. So you might have a $400,000 house at a lower interest rate that is the same as a $360,000 house. So it really just depends on the situation. And more so, the answer to that question is, what is that payment in relation to your income, right? Like, so that's what you want to pay attention to. If the higher interest at a lower price point fits better for your budget, that's the way to go. Now, in terms of home prices, I think we'll start seeing them level off. I don't think that we'll see values go down. I think it's the same for cost of goods. Most goods, guys, like the cost of paper towels, like I just don't see them coming down. Like, this is the new price for paper towels, right? And so I see the same for real estate. I just do. And as far as interest rates, because I saw somebody else ask that too, I think that we're going to see rates right where we're seeing them, at least for the foreseeable future, high 4s, mid 5s. I hope, knock on wood, that they don't exceed that. But I do see I do see a time where interest rates will be in the low 4s again, and that's just based on my own personal opinion. That is not fact, but that's what I see in the market.
Sure. Also, don't let that prevent you from getting in the market, because people 2 years ago thought the prices couldn't go any higher, right? And now they're kicking themselves, wishing that they had gotten in. Or people were saying, oh, I missed the 2.75, I'm going to wait for it to come down. Well, guess what? It didn't. So I think look at your personal financial situation and see what makes sense, and also how long you're going to own the home. If you own a home and the market retracts a small amount and you're not selling it, it doesn't really affect you, right? Like, it affects you when you sell. And if I have a mentor of mine who always says any real estate decision over 20 years looks like you're a genius, because they always go up over time historically, right? So even if it goes down a little bit, right? And I agree with Lizy. I don't think that the signs are there. If you're planning to hold on for a while, it's not going to matter.
So a couple points I would like to touch on here. So one of them was, the whole concept with buy now, refinance later. So I hate that advice. I never give that advice. Me, myself, I've only ever refinanced one time on any of the properties I've held. And that's because refinancing over and over and over again, guys, causes you to lose equity because you roll in your closing costs every single time. And so unless there is a significant saving, I'm just the type of person that will play more money on my principal balance and pay it off in a quicker time frame, because long haul, I'll be paying less interest. And that to me is more important. Now, there are opportunities though, like I went from a 4.25 to a 2.875. Yes, that made a significant difference to my monthly payment. And I still make the same payment that I was making when I had the higher mortgage payment, because again, my goal is just to pay it off in a quicker amount of time. But no, I hate that advice. I would never gamble with my future that way. Buy when your budget says it's ready. And the only reason I know that lesson to be true is because when I bought my dumb house back in 2006, I hate this townhome. I like love and hate it. Taught me so many things. It's like the Harvard School education of real estate. So I bought it, $168,000 on a 2-year ARM, and with interest only, because I was told I was going to get a raise in a year. So I was comfortable with the risk, right? I was comfortable. I know I'm going to get this raise. I know I'm going to make more money. Housing crash. I lose my job. I have to get a different job, not at a higher pay rate. And then it's an adjustable rate mortgage, guys. So not only did that, it was like 7.25% at the time, guys. It went to 9% at one time. I literally thought of selling one of my organs to pay this mortgage. It was so bad. My life was so bad. I was eating $10 a month budgets weekly for food, which consisted of ramen and Hormel chili. Like, this was my effing life. So do not gamble with your futures that way. I'm just saying. I digress.
Agreed. All the things, yes.
Okay. So other comments about Fed funds rate. So guys, the Fed controls the rates at which banks borrow from the federal government. It does not have a direct impact on interest rates. They are related to each other, meaning that when things impact the stock market, they generally are beneficial for mortgage-backed securities. When we're talking about the economy in general and inflation, we know that because housing is so hot, right, and mortgage-backed securities were artificially low due to the government buying them, and that's what's been impacting interest rates. So it's just coincidental that right now that they're talking about this, we're seeing interest rates rise. Generally, anything that takes away profits from Wall Street is actually beneficial to rates. So it's just not right now this second. Okay, so... Oh, and Fort Grove bought a house in 2011, bottom of the market, $260. So we know you made out well. Yay, man. And then we have Millennial Money. You're back. I'm hoping to buy at the end of the year because I'll have some extra money to compete in the Los Angeles market. So I think that's awesome. I do think, we are starting to see more and more inventory. So hopefully you can take advantage of a really great deal. Let's see. Yeah, bad arms. That's why you're not seeing a whole lot of arms right now. Like, this is the thing people keep calling me for: 40-year mortgages, arms, interest onlys. They just haven't rolled out yet because people are just not. There's not an investment pool for them. So Raphael says, "Oh man, that's rough. It was rough." For a first-time home buyer, do I recommend a 30-year or 15-year? First-time home buyers, I recommend a 30-year. I think it's way more flexible with your budget. It's doubtful you're going to own the home for 15 years. Most first-time home buyers are generally somewhere around 7 years for their first home, and that's because of limited inventory and because of the recession. Back in the times where things were, I hate to even compare, but normal, do you know what I mean? It was somewhere between 3 and 5 years.
Yeah.
So lots of life happens to you from your first home to your second home. So there's that.
I agree. And, particularly with your first home and you're getting adjusted to being a homeowner and the unexpected costs that can come along with that potentially, you don't necessarily want to lock yourself into a higher payment. Save it for the what ifs.
Yes. All right, guys, I just realized we're 15 minutes after 7, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up this live. But guys, it would mean the world to me if you would go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, send me your questions, and tune in to another weekly live next week at 6 p.m. And if you guys have any real estate related questions, where can they find you?
On Facebook, Emily Duarte, or Instagram, Emily Realtor, or our team page, DuarteREgroup.com.
Yes, and she's very Googleable, guys. So definitely check her out. We'll definitely put her contact information in the comment notes below. Thank you guys so freaking much for tuning in to this channel. I appreciate you guys so much. Don't forget to hit the like button.